I married without love, no butterflies, no trembling hands, no racing heart at the altar. Just a promise made to a stranger. And a love that arrived far too late to ask permission. I married without love, and the silence at the beginning of that marriage was louder than any argument could ever be. It wasn't an uncomfortable silence filled with anger, it was a careful, polite quiet, the kind that exists when two people don't yet know how close they're allowed to stand to each other. We spoke when necessary and smiled when expected, but our words never crossed into the territory of the heart. Love was not absent because it had died, it was absent because it had never been invited in the first place. The days after the wedding felt strangely ordinary. There was no dramatic shift, no emotional storm, no overwhelming sense of union. Just routine settling into place like furniture arranged by someone else. Morning greetings were gentle but distant. Questions were practical, about meals, schedules, responsibilities, never about fears, dreams, or longing. It felt like living beside someone whose story I was not allowed to read, only observe from the margins. At night, the silence grew heavier. The room held two breathing souls, yet felt emotionally empty. I often wondered if this quiet meant peace or simply unfamiliarity. I searched for signs, an accidental touch, a lingering glance, that might hint at something deeper waiting to emerge. But everything remained measured, controlled, respectful. We were careful not to intrude into each other's inner worlds, as if love were a fragile object that could shatter if touched too soon. There was no resentment in that silence, only uncertainty. We were both trying to do the right thing, trying to fit into the roles handed to us, hoping that time would fill the gaps emotion had left behind. Love stories often begin with passion, but ours began with restraint. With distance. With the quiet acceptance that this was how it was supposed to be, even if it didn't feel like how it was supposed to feel. In that early phase, marriage felt more like an agreement than a connection. A shared space without shared emotions. A partnership built on patience rather than desire. And in that silence, I learned how heavy unspoken feelings can be, how loud a heart becomes when it has no place to speak, how strange it is to belong to someone on paper while still feeling completely alone beside them. Living beside a stranger is a quiet kind of loneliness, especially when that stranger is the person you call your spouse. We shared the same roof, the same walls, the same daily routines, yet our lives ran on parallel lines that never seemed to meet. Every corner of the house felt unfamiliar, not because the space was new, but because the presence within it had not yet become home. We coexisted carefully, like two guests afraid of overstaying their welcome in each other's lives. Mornings began with soft exchanges that carried no emotional weight. A polite greeting, a nod, a few necessary words before the day pulled us in separate directions. There was comfort in knowing someone was there, but also an ache in realizing how little we actually knew about each other. I would notice their habits from a distance, the way they preferred silence over conversation, the way they moved through the house as if trying not to disturb me. Even shared spaces felt divided, marked by invisible boundaries neither of us dared to cross. Meals were the strangest moments. Sitting across from each other, we filled the air with harmless topics while avoiding anything real. The clink of utensils often spoke louder than our voices. I wanted to ask questions that mattered, to understand the person sitting so close yet feeling so far away, but hesitation always held me back. What if curiosity felt like intrusion? What if honesty arrived too early and shattered the fragile balance we had built? At night, the house seemed to breathe differently. The quiet settled deeper, wrapping itself around us like a reminder of how alone we both were. I lay awake listening to the sounds of another life unfolding beside mine, wondering what thoughts lived behind their silence. We were together, yet emotionally untouched, sharing space without sharing ourselves. There was no conflict, no harshness, no reason to complain. And yet, something essential was missing. Love stories often speak of longing for someone far away, but this was a longing for someone right beside me. A desire to bridge the distance without knowing how to begin. In that shared roof, I learned that closeness is not measured by proximity, and that two hearts can live inches apart while remaining worlds away. Change did not arrive in my marriage with grand declarations or sudden realizations. It came disguised as ordinary moments, so small they almost felt meaningless at first. There was no dramatic turning point, no single day I could point to and say that this was when love began. Instead, it unfolded quietly, stitching itself into the fabric of our daily lives without asking to be noticed. Love waited patiently, knowing I was not ready to name it yet. It started with attention, not the kind that demands gratitude, but the kind that simply exists. A glass of water placed near me when I was lost in thought. A reminder about something important I had forgotten. These gestures didn't ask for recognition, yet they lingered in my mind longer than they should have. I began to feel seen in ways I hadn't expected, as if someone was learning my rhythm without forcing their own onto it. Conversations slowly changed. They became less cautious, less rehearsed. We laughed once, unexpectedly, over something trivial, and the sound of it surprised us both. That laughter cracked open a door neither of us had dared to touch before. After that, silence felt different, not empty, but comfortable. It no longer pressed against my chest, it rested beside me. I noticed the way concern appeared in their voice when I was tired, how their eyes searched my face when I spoke. These moments were brief, fleeting, easy to ignore, yet impossible to forget. Love did not rush in, it walked carefully, respecting the walls we had built, waiting for us to lower them on our own terms. There was a moment when I realized I was looking forward to their presence. Not because it was expected, but because it felt reassuring. The stranger I once lived beside was becoming familiar, not through effort, but through consistency. Through kindness that did not demand explanation. These small moments did not announce themselves as love, but they softened something inside me. They made room where emptiness once lived. They turned obligation into comfort, distance into curiosity, and silence into something shared, something warm, something alive. Falling in love after the vows were spoken felt like discovering a secret that had been hiding in plain sight. I had believed that love was supposed to arrive before promises, not grow from them, and yet there it was, slowly unfolding in the space we had created together. It was not sudden or overwhelming. It did not sweep me off my feet. It settled into my life gently, as if it had always planned to arrive late. I began to notice how my thoughts returned to them throughout the day. Not out of obligation, but out of comfort. Their presence became something I missed when they were not around, a quiet absence that followed me even in crowded rooms. I caught myself wanting to share small details of my day, moments that once felt insignificant but now carried meaning simply because I wanted them to know. The way I looked at them changed without warning. Familiarity softened into affection, and affection deepened into something warmer. Their flaws no longer stood out as imperfections, they became part of the person I was learning to care for. I realized that love did not need perfection to exist, only honesty and patience. There was a tenderness in the way we grew closer. We did not rush toward each other. We moved carefully, aware of the fragile beginning we shared. Trust formed slowly, built through consistency rather than promises. Each shared glance, each quiet understanding, became a silent affirmation that what we were building was real. I found myself choosing them, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Love became a daily decision, made in ordinary moments, strengthened by mutual respect. The vows we had once spoken without passion began to carry meaning, not as words remembered, but as feelings lived. Falling in love after marriage taught me that timing does not define sincerity. Love does not lose its value because it arrives late. Sometimes, it grows deeper because it has been tested by uncertainty and restraint. What we shared was not the love of fantasy or expectation, but the love of reality, shaped by patience, strengthened by understanding, and grounded in the quiet truth that we had found each other after already belonging to each other. I used to believe that love was the beginning of everything, the spark that justified every promise and every commitment. I thought marriage without love was an empty structure, standing on borrowed hope and social expectation. Living this story changed that belief slowly, not by argument, but by experience. I learned that sometimes love is not the first chapter, but the meaning that reveals itself later. In the absence of love at the start, there was space for observation. I saw who they were without the distortion of passion. I noticed their patience, their quiet strength, the way they showed up even when emotions were not demanding it. Love, when it finally arrived, was not blind. It was informed. It knew the person it was choosing, not the idea of them. There was a strange safety in that order. Without love rushing ahead, we built respect first. We learned how to coexist, how to listen, how to give each other room to breathe. These foundations did not feel romantic at the time, but they held everything steady. When affection began to grow, it had something solid to rest on. I realized that love does not always announce itself with urgency. Sometimes it waits until trust is formed, until fear has softened, until two people feel safe enough to be vulnerable. Love can be a response, not a requirement. It can grow from kindness, from reliability, from the quiet reassurance that someone will stay even when there is no passion demanding it. This kind of love felt different from what I had imagined. It was calmer, deeper, less fragile. It did not depend on constant excitement or grand gestures. It lived in consistency, in shared effort, in the comfort of being understood without explanation. I learned that love does not lose its purity because it comes later. In some ways, it becomes more honest. Marriage taught me that love is not always the reason two people come together, but it can become the reason they stay. It can be shaped by time, strengthened by patience, and awakened by choice. Love does not always come first, but when it comes with understanding,